I would like to welcome you. First of all, let me say I am not Charles Carr. I am a fill-in for Charles. So I am a facsimile for the wonderful Charles, who is not here today, but I want to welcome you to Philly Loves Poetry. And tonight is a pretty special night. I have, well, one very old friend that's joining me, and one person who I've met several times, and a new friend. So what I would like to do, since I'm a big fan of Queen Latifah, it'll be what? Ladies first. So I'm going to start by introducing Lois Moses. And I just want to just read briefly your bio, if you don't mind. And Lois Moses is a native of Philadelphia. I love that part. She was a Master's of Fine Arts from the University of Los Angeles, the University of California in Los Angeles. She has a law degree from Temple University, and she also has done her Master's at LaSalle University. She is an actress who has studied, and seems she's done some off-Broadway stuff. So I'm going to ask you about that. And that was Lady of Fatima, correct? Okay, excellent, excellent. And did you actually get classes with Martin?
Well, Martin Landau and Shelby Winter, some of the actors studio.
Which is Shelby's one of my favorite. Now, you also mentioned in your bio you have 3 chapbooks, and the 4th one is coming out this summer. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, can you just give us the 3 that you released already, and a little bit about the 4th that's coming out this summer?
Okay, the first one is called Not Just Another Black Woman, and that was a journey toward defining self, giving oneself voice, and telling people who I was, as opposed to being told in a society that told me who I was. The second one is called Missing Pages, Women Behind the Glass Door, and that was written while I was in law school. And that was really a place where what I found was that there was always this kind of space around my interpretation of the law or the history that I saw. And so, as much as it was supposed to be equal, there was always this sort of invisible space where you could not speak up or be heard. And then the final one was called A Timely Trilogy, which was really a combination of, well, Timely Trilogy was really about finding the divinity in myself and coming forth through that work. And the last one is called Freedom, Not Them Give, because I realized at a certain point, and thinking about Malcolm X and thinking about Hurricane, specifically during a very trying time in my life, that I realized that freedom is not given by other people. People may have the ability to encapsulate you physically, but freedom is the interpretation of not only who you are, but what's possible in life, and it's a spiritual construction.
So, I love these living bios. So of course now I'm going to do Katie, who didn't give me many words, so I'll be asking her many questions. But anyway, Katie is a well-known poet in Philadelphia, and has done a number of things. Fire and Ice was a very wonderful thing from her poetry back in those days and beyond. I know that you've done some teaching.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you, and I've noticed that this new muse, or maybe it's just a muse you already had of photography.
Already had.
So I'm going to ask you a question. What is the next big thing?
On my own buildings such as this, and I already teach both photography and poetry. I left Temple because of the politics, just to start my own school, the Philadelphia School of Creative Endeavors, which any art form can come there and be taught, not just photography and poetry. Whatever your medium is or your genre, that's going to be the space for it, without restriction.
All right. So let us know what we can do to help. I'm sure you will.
I will.
I'm sure you will.
I have people who are offering to put up some capital.
I figured. So guys, if you want to know more, do you have a website?
kdmorrisphotography.com.
Okay, great. Now, I'm sorry. I am going to read one of the bios, and this is Dr. Maurice Henderson bio. You've been on 25 different talk shows and news programs, that you teach at the Temple University Pan-African Studies, that you've been doing that since 1985. You've also received Promoter of the Year from the Harlem Literary and Art Conference, not to mention the fact that you've been recognized by the American Poetry Center, the American Bookseller Association, the Library of Congress Centers for Books, also your Black Book Guide, and the American Biographical Institute. there are other things that I've seen that you've done, but tonight we're going to celebrate two of the things that you've really put forth, and that's the National Black Authors Tour and the National Black Arts Spoken Word Tour.
Yes.
So I, being one of the people that actually got a chance to see this at Plays and Players, I will tell you as a poet, what you showed to me, and I just want to share with you today, is the fact that performance and perfection can actually meet. And to me, perfection has always been finding the right words. And I have to say that when I saw your performance, and I actually went back in YouTube a couple things just to see it, I find that your work, not only is it well-chosen words, it's a performance that really sings. And also your voice is a percussive instrument. It just keeps banging out truth. So as a person who has seen your work, I just want to say I appreciate it, I admire it, and this is really a celebration to not just you, but to all the members of your group. So what's next for you? Because I heard that this is coming to an end, which doesn't make me happy. But I'm okay, I'm a big boy, but what's on the horizon?
I think I'm going to go more towards publishing books that are not in the poetry field. I'm working a lot more on films, and less on poetry and less on playwriting. And I really want to do some more scholarly things. I want to go back on television to be like an expert or a leading authority, and because I'm a newly elected politician, so I'm moving towards politics now.
Well, yes, politics. I did notice you did something where poetry was being used as an expression of political, I would say, upsurgent maybe, or upheaval. So as a poet, just curious, how do you transition, or are you really transitioning into politics?
I would say it's more, I'm using my voice in a different level now. I've always been an activist per se. Now I'm being non-theatrical. So I'm still going to attack issues. I'm still going to, but this way I can't use profane language. So it's just a different avenue. And I think that quite often we continue to do the same thing because that's all we think that we can do, and it's worked for us thus far. So now I'm going down a different path, and I'm telling a lot of writers, continue to grow, continue to develop, and continue to further your career.
Okay. I'm just curious, I'm going to pick on you now, Lois. As a writer, okay, you're an artist. When did you become this activist? Were you an artist first or an activist first?
It's an interesting intersection. I mean, I remember writing my first poem when I was 6, and I mean vividly. And then I also, I guess when I was marching on Washington against the Vietnam War with my stepfather, who at that point was we weren't supposed to say the word. So, but you know,
we didn't hear
active,
that. No one
yeah.
heard that.
I mean, at this point, yeah. Well, maybe it's not a good thing to say in this climate. But so, and then I was at King's funeral, and I remember marching. So I think for me, it's always been an intersection. That one is a progenitor toward. In other words, one is used really to open and ignite the other. So for me, it's healing, activism, and art are intertwined. There's no real separation for me. I only do art for liberation and healing. So, I mean, that's all I write about. That's all that's how it comes out of me, and that's what I use art for. So I don't see one coming. And I'm a third-generation poet. So I actually have a great aunt who there's a documentary on. Her name is Lucy. The documentary is called Lucy Moses. And when I went back and started reading her work is all about African consciousness, defining of self through one of my favorite poems. Hers is called Black Hands, and it's about those hands that that in terms of liberation, all the things that hands did for for us to be able to stand and have opportunities and choices. So, yeah, I don't see the distinction.
Okay. And I see you nodding. So how would you answer that question?
I think mine came at the same time because I found my voice through the Last Poets when they released Blessed Are Those That Struggle. Georgie Woods played it in around 1969 on the radio, WDAS AM, and you know, the syncopation, the message. So I asked my mother what it was. She said it's poetry, because I was used to hearing church music on Sundays and everything else during the week. And then here's the Last Poets, then Watch Prophets, there's Scott Heron. Then I started reading, and then I started writing. So my purpose of writing is to teach, to share things that happened either in history or current. You know, I mean, I write other things. My mother used to say, may she rest in peace, you always write so deep. You need to write something light and fun. So I wrote one fun poem just for her. That was it. I said, okay, here it is. You know, now back, you know, she said, you're so serious. It's so intense. I said, well, that's the life I'm experiencing.
Right.
So I write what I know. You know, my degree is in fine arts, visual arts. Learned how to play piano growing up. So, you know, these facets that I discovered about myself, I use them as part of this creativity. I produce CDs, I produce tracks for Talon Macy and a few other poets on the scene as well.
And that's what I've noticed about all three of you. There's sort of like this sort of a melting from one art to the other and snatching and gathering. And you mentioned that that you are encouraging other writers to continue to grow. How do you help someone see the need for growth?
Well, I mean, so
Yes.
no, because like I always say that you need to have a triple threat. I mean, so for me, I can do poetry, I can do drama, I can do storytelling, I can do some hip hop. So that means, because I've gone places and heard people do poems similar to mine that wasn't mine. So I know I couldn't get up there and do my poem the way that I normally do it. So
Right.
I had to, you know, throw some jive and I had to hook it up a little bit, you know. So, and that's one thing. I always try not to do the poem the same way each and every time. And for me, I get to play, and I like playing around with on the stage. And the interesting thing, like, so a lot of times we may perform together,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't practice, you know. So you know, if Kyle,
Well, no, you don't practice like to go up and rehearse what we're going to do.
no, like, so if Kyle hits a high note, that means, you know, I have to groove with that, you know. So
Correct.
so it all changes. But for me, it's about staying in the moment. It's about beats, atmosphere, you know,
Absolutely.
timing, and it's all different. You know, one day I may talk about Katrina, and I may hit a high note in the middle, and I may talk about Katrina another day and may hit the high note at the end. So I'm always in conflict to find out what's really going on in a piece. And the interesting thing, I remember some author telling me, well, we should dine on stage. And, you know, I'll be there today, and then I'll come back.
You know, there's something that you just mentioned, and I'm going to ask you all the question. The one thing I hear is jazz. And what I mean by jazz is the ability, because you're just talking about basically just being in the moment, with the moment, which is the improvisational, you know, skill set that you need for jazz. So, I'm going to ask you a question. I should have done this ahead of time. Of the jazz musicians that you've listened to, who do you think best reflects you musically as a writer?
Nina Simone. I looked at what the film documentary, What Happened. Nina
Yes,
Simone.
I do remember that.
And I found what she was doing on the piano, her classical things, was so tremendous. I found that, and I can see how she had gone, how the work had really destroyed her, and for me, how she maneuvered the words, how her words became like instruments. I mean, and how, like, I watched her just fall, you know, just drop her head and start shaking, you know, and that's what the word does to me. So it's not just the vocal cords, but it's how she used her hands on the piano. and how suddenly she would take that pause. And that stuff is just so interesting to me. So I would say Nina Simone, and I would say Gil Scott-Heron because he played, I watched him play like 5 instruments.
Yes.
And yeah, that was just phenomenal.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think you were actually on a panel that was discussing Gil Scott.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, and I remember that. That was quite interesting. We're not going to talk about that right now, but guys, it's on YouTube. That's all I'm going to say. So, who is the jazz musician you think?
Well, I'm not a jazz fan, so
Okay.
that's hard. But I am Nina Simone. I mean, I saw her a lot as a child, particularly in light of her activism, and so I would say, in terms of her walk and her music, probably the most closely aligned with me because of the sound, the energy, and for me, it's all vibration.
Okay.
So whether it's poetry, whether it's and I probably write closer. I use spirituals probably closer, more in depth than any other music in terms of the foundation of my work, because most of my work is connected with ancestry, legacy, and how African Americans have subscribed meaning to their life through their acts, their resistance, and so on. So I think for me, spirituals, because of the vibration of that, spirituals were really about coming out of. I think oftentimes jazz is in a different vibration, so it doesn't connect for me very strongly. It's very heavy.
So, with the spirituals, the connection, is it the connection, because I do know that one of the differences between jazz and the spirituals is that with spirituals, you're working with the pentatonic scale. So it's
Right.
those 5 notes. So those things resonate more with you.
Well, yeah, because it's a consistent beat. It's a freedom trip. For me, it's the freedom.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? It's the coming out. It's the working hard. It's the moving through. It's a constant pressure. Whereas I find jazz takes me in too many places. I need a direct road towards freedom. You know what I'm saying? I need to get out of the box. And then I think with what you said earlier, for me, when you say, there's the training. For me, I mean, I've trained my whole life. I have a master's in fine arts. I've been, I performed on stage for 20-some odd years or more. So the fact is, doing the work, doing the classes, and so the studying, you are equipped for the presentation. So in other words, it's the same. I do the same kind of preparation and work that I do in my poetry, and it's the moment to moment, because the idea is when everything is activated, and when you're in the consciousness of what it is that you are there to say, that through that preparation and that history of training, it ignites, and then through, for me, calling on the ancestors and all the other stuff that sort of comes together, and therein becomes that freedom and that praise song, where that you can deliver it to the audience, and hopefully, they catch something that they can use in terms of their, or whatever it is that they need at that moment. And lastly, poetry is not a luxury. That's for me the real song in terms of when I look at Audre Lorde, because, and that's why when you talk about moving through genres, because right now for me film is probably the most important mechanism that I'm using to tell my story. And for me, it's not what form we're using, it's what you're trying to say. So that, like, poetry isn't a luxury, nothing is a luxury when it comes to creating an avenue for freedom or consciousness or enlightenment for the people, so that we can get out of the mess we're in.
Okay. I like those different tools.
Yeah, that's all, exactly. And art, film, photography, whatever it is, it's how can you help people see?
Okay, I like that. You get a wider audience. And I'm just curious, I'm going back to the jazz question.
So with me, I'm all over the place. Sometimes I would write the Fela, and sometimes I'm with Joe Sample, Dave Weckl, John Patitucci, Stanley Clark. It depends on what's going on, what I'm listening to, where I'm at with that connection between the moment and the music and my creativity. Then more so when I was performing more, but I'm also a concert photographer, so I came in contact with a lot of musicians. And the biggest concert I've ever shot was it was a whole P-Funk All-Stars, that whole camp, from Bootsy to George Clinton, and Tina Marie was also in that bill. And then I also, ironically, may she rest in peace, her her bass player, her music director, when he got married, they flew me to Encino to shoot his wedding, and Tina Marie officiated. So
that must have been interesting.
so that was interesting. That was in '96. That was in '96.
I will definitely talk to you more about that. Okay. Yeah, because Tina Marie was very
Right.
yeah.
So so you have that like with Fela, it was all about the drums.
Absolutely.
It was always about the drums. Everything has drums and bass lines, a heartbeat, and the way the blood flows through our veins. When you hear it, when your blood pressure rises, you hear it in your ears. You hear the drum, you feel it. So, and then when you mellowing out is when you take that exhale, is when you hear the bass, the release of that low tone. And when I write to that, I write ebbs and flows. And when I teach in different methods: circular, ebb and flow, up the hill, crescendo, hit the top, stay there for a while. Now it's time to come back down, take it on. And but that's also how my life is, you know, the experience. Sometimes you just got to take it home.
Hey, I've noticed that there's a bunch of educators in here, so I'm going to ask you a question. What do you do if you were to come across the so-called writer's block?
Well, I used to smoke weed, but
Well, actually, for medicinal reasons.
No comment.
For medicinal reasons.
no, see,
I wasn't there.
I just go off and do something else until I find the voice. For me, I have an abstract way of writing. So when I write plays, I don't write them first. I act them out and I tape them. Then I go back and write them. So I'm not very mechanical in a lot of things that I do. And like if I'm writing a poem and I get writer's block, that means that maybe I should be writing about something else. Maybe it's a different issue that I should tackle. So, and because like I can write, so I write news releases, I write articles, so I'm always shifting gears and going from one thing to another. So I'm always going to be in the phase of writing something.
Okay. Now, speaking of writing, I'm going to jump to a little bit different question for you. What is your editing process like?
I read my work out loud and I listen. I listen to it first. I hear what it is, and then I continue to read it, and I hear whether it's the right word or whether it's not. And I usually sit we call it the upper room, or what I call the God space. And in that space, there's just the purity. It's a rhythm. For me, it's all rhythm. That's what poetry is. It's rhythm. And so I can not only vibrationally, but also hear. And a lot of times I'll also, if it's not the right word and I'm not hearing it, I'll go find the thesauruses, or I'll look for a combination. Or sometimes I will actually go back and read other people, particularly Sonia, Audre Lorde, and Zaki Changé. Those are the three, because I think those are probably the most influential for me, particularly in Zaki Changé, because I'm angry too. No, seriously, but I mean, I find her, she is the most, because she is for African American women, she is our rites of passage. Colored girls, most of the actresses I know of my generation, the generation after me, have done Colored Girls.
Mm-hmm.
It is a rites of passage.
Absolutely.
So there is a rhythm, and there's a sound, and there is a connection artistically where she's just sort of like the beginning for us. And that's what I do. I do a lot of different things. Sometimes I get up and dance, or I'll listen to. I go through I only listen to. I'm really bad. I only listen to late '70s and '80s music.
Okay, which is the greatest decade for
right,
music.
It is. So sometimes I will literally just go and thank God for YouTube, and I'll just play. It may be Lenny White. It may be George Benson. I mean, I'll just go. Angela Bofill, I'll just go on, Regina White, people Bryson, and I'll just hear it, and that's how, for me, it's really all about hearing, and it's also word structure, so it's just a lot of different, I play.
No,
That's really it. It's a dance for me, it's a play.
Now, I'm just curious, Katie, because I've seen your photography, very composed, very controlled, free, which is kind of strange to say that something is free and controlled at the same time. But how do you, because in your writing, in your performance, it's very, very improvisational at times, and it's very much in the spirit. How do you take that energy and put it into such a controlled art form as photography?
Well, by combining the two, because our words have to be images. We have to create imagery through our lyrics, through our performance. I may not be as physically animated as Maurice, but I will transcend that through the word, through the energy and the power of the word. And so far as with photography, I think that control is what I learned by shooting concerts, because I have no control of anything in that room. Like in the studio setting, I control the light, the white balance, I control that. In the studio, at a concert, no control in the moment. Whatever, if something may be happening over here that's more interesting than what the lead singer is doing. Like last week, it was Kim, you know, and Tamar Braxton, and Damien Escobar. So no control of the light, no control of what was happening. But I see them doing their thing, but I see the band doing something interesting. And that also becomes part of my writing, because dipping into that motivation, the writer's block, if I come into that, then I'll revisit a piece of work that I left, that I abandoned. And sometimes part of that work, body work, goes into the piece that I'm stuck on. And I'll take a line from here, and then it starts the process. With photography, it's the same thing. I have a lot of ideas, but if there's no subject matter so far as people, then the stuffed animal becomes the subject. So there's shooter's block and writer's block.
Well, shooter's block, that sounds like something else.
Well, photographers, that's it's a term that we use, that's a disclaimer.
Let's make sure now, we're writers, we have to
Right.
be precise with our words, because I don't want them to knock on my door.
Right.
But anyway, I would be remiss if I didn't start to talk about the tour. And I would like to not only talk to you about the tour, but in our audience, we have members who are also part of the tour. So I kind of want to get all of your feels about what it's like now that you're transitioning.
I think 32 years is a long time. I think for me, it's been a blessing. The opportunity just knocked, and I was there to take advantage of. It was 1985. We were at the Mega Everest Black Writers Conference, and all of the old elders were performing, and there was no young writers out there performing. And so I knew Sonia. So, and I said, Sonia, ask, is that next door rooms available? So she asked, he said, yeah. I said, can you get me that room? She said, yeah, go ahead and use it. And so I went around and found all the writers who were not in that room and said, we're going to be convening a young writer session in 15 minutes. And before I knew it, the room was jam-packed. And having gone back and forth in New York, I tapped into the African Poetry Theater. I tapped into some writers from the New York Writers Collective. I tapped into some writers from Essence magazine, and then Lamont Steptoe from Rowan Press.
Yes.
Sharon Leonard Goodman from In the Tradition Press, and Kamika Williams, who was then at Bushfire. And so we all sat down, and like Kyle does, I made a little name tag. And so everybody talking about, there was like a room, they was crowd, and they was talking, yeah, we about to get it on. And so somebody said, so who are you all? I said, national. They said, yay. I said, black. They said, all right. I said, author. They said, go ahead. I said, tour. They said, yay. And that's how we got started. Okay. And since then, having writers going to film, poetry, CDs, book, journalism, just a whole plethora of stuff. And I'd say, I can honestly say that when I look back at some of those that came out of the tour who worked with us, I won Grammy Awards, Academy Awards, Tony Awards, just the whole thing. So for me, it's been such a blessing, and over the 200 writers that came through us and that worked with us, I can go across the country and run into someone. I believe that the National Black Authors Tour, when it came down to collective work and responsibility, when it came down to teaching, when it came down to organizing, when it came down to preparation, we were unmatched. And by us being taken all across the country, back and forth, I'm talking about Detroit, Houston, Chicago, Ohio, LA, New York, Connecticut, all across the country. And like North Carolina, Atlanta, Mississippi, Memphis, Indiana. We just went back and forth, and we were doing our thing. And television caught on to us, the industry caught on to us, everyone caught on to us, and then they began to monopolize what it was that we were doing. They were bringing in sham poets who were still in folk stuff, who were still in folk style, and who were doing certain things. But then, and the best thing that when Kyle and Malik, like in the late 1990s, they started shaking up a little bit something. So I said, well, we need to have another derivative, and that's when the National Black Art Spoken Word Tour came. And that was for their voice, and that's how I learned how to up my game a little bit. I had to up the game a little bit, and so for me, I would say since 1985, this is now 2018, 33 years later, it's been a wonderful ride. But now somebody else has to sail the ship, somebody else has to get on board and take whatever is going to happen to the next phase.
All right, so I'm going to ask you, Lois, now actually there's a group in Pittsburgh that you work with as well. I just noticed
Yeah,
that.
it's not true, they're no longer. Fortunately, that closed shop.
So there's a bit of sweetness there. So
Yeah, and inner city cultures, and I worked with several different, African American theater companies, and you said most of the Freedom Theater, they're all closed shop, which is, it's sad.
So how do we
because it's
create
incredible.
that?
I don't know. I'm not going to do it though. I mean, it's just, I saw what it did to, John Allen was one of my mentors. Whenever I came home from college, I would just sit at his feet and talk with him, and I saw what it cost him. And because not only integrity, but, authenticity and, and truth seekers. And what it cost him his life. And then I look at my director in Pittsburgh and the writer Rob Penny and Vernell Lilly, and Vernell had a family and she was able to self-preserve, but I saw what it did to Rob Penny, and he was amazing, and August Wilson, because August Wilson used to come in and out. He and Rob Penny were good friends, but uncovering the truth in society through art and work, because they weren't just artists; they were activists. They were excavators of truth and of the culture, and that's how I feel about this gentleman here, because truly, in terms of the opportunities, because he put me on stage. I was an actress. I've been writing poetry since I was 6. He saw, and I left LA because, first of all, I was not going to play a mammy, a crack whore, or a prostitute. Not that those aren't legitimate stories, because people get there for different reasons. But no one was telling the stories. And when you have particularly white males writing, and I remember I was there in the 80s, you have white males writing stories without any experience or any input from the actual culture or the objects that they were writing about, the people, then you have these caricatures. And I wasn't, first of all, I have a grandmother who was looking down on me and making sure that I was not, that I was going to tell the stories of the women in my life. I'm a 4th generation educated. So you know what I'm saying? So I knew who I was, and I knew that wasn't who I was. So I started writing as the bottom line. And Maurice was basically, come home and tell your own stories. Then I met Kamika, and I was like, okay, it's over. It's over. You know what I'm saying? It's over. Because I finally found a woman who was writing stories that spoke to who I was and was doing it unapologetically. So, and I realized that that's, you know, that's the story I wanted to tell, and being able to fuse my theatrical background as well as my art and my, you know, and my dedication to activism, artivist, being an artivist, it was the perfect storm and combination. And then Sonia gave us her play.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And, you know, I've been living in that play since I was in my 20s, Sister Sonji. So I just thank him for that. But I also understand that he's tired. And I don't know, we need, you know, that's the one thing that's unfortunately we're missing in our communities oftentimes is succession planning, although that new show Succession, we're not the only ones doing a bad job.
You know what?
But all we have to do is go to Pennsylvania Avenue. But the point is, we need some succession planning because what he has done here, and who I've watched people come through him, and it is amazing. And I absolutely thank you with all honor. And he has been my friend since, oh my God, 80. Yeah, we were what, about 10?
Look, let's not say how.
No,
let's
no,
not say how, because see, you know, if you age yourself,
we were
you have to
10.
age me.
No, so, but yeah, we've been friends like, I think he's my oldest friend that I still speak to.
Your your dearest friend. So I think you just did an ad for how we're going to move forward. To be honest with you, Katie, what are you going to miss about this?
Well, it wasn't always a smooth ride. It wasn't always a smooth transition. Especially, I remember when I came into the tour. Well, I mean, when I was working my way into the tour, earning my way into the tour. I remember there was a time when I was ostracized by the tour, but it didn't hurt me. It made me stronger. And I remember one day we were at Freedom Theater, and I went to do a poem, and they stood up and walked out. But it was with the reason because I learned that if he and I beefing, I'm beef with everybody. And that was a lesson that I learned. So I had to take my energy and create my own tour. Mm-hmm. And I ended up in Chicago, Milwaukee, LA, Atlanta, on my own. And then word got back. I said, oh, so he's serious.
So almost like a hazing almost.
Well, you know, no hazing. But so then they embraced me. Then they said, okay, well, if you want to do this, you have to do it this way. We would go to poetry venues, wouldn't let me read, maybe listen, maybe watch. It's almost like a martial artist when you get into the fight, and the master said, you're not ready for that yet.
Right.
You know, and so the tour for me took me places and allowed me to build others up at the same time. So far as it got me to a symposium at the University of Hawaii for a week, where writers from around the world came, and they shared their experiences. And then I took that information, turned it to a teaching tool. Like, okay, so this is happening here. And Malcolm X said it best, if you're not concerned about what's happening you should not only concern yourself with what's happening on your block, but across the ocean. Because it's going to come back, the effects, because we're all connected. And artists of any genre were connected by some means, either by their creativity or by their experience. And that's what the tour has done for me, connected me through experiences.
Okay. And speaking about connection, I'm actually going to go out into the audience to try to connect with them, and actually with those who are in the studio. So I would like to start with the members of the tour. Malik, we'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Malik the Freak. I'm sexual intellectual. And I just want to, thank all you guys, because you guys are my mentors. But my question is, and I know everyone would like to know, is how do you guys make a career, or how do you pay for your bills doing what we love? Just briefly.
So my answer to that was, and from radio and TV interviews I've done, they said, well, how do you do it? I always had a job that financed everything, but when that job wasn't available, the hustle button clicked. It was like a switch. My mother always said, you can't get rich working for somebody else. You got to have a hustle. So I took the knowledge I had as a nightclub and promoter and poetry venue host and used those same connections to create venues for myself in other cities. So about up until 10 years ago, I had 5 cities where I hosted venues. Brooklyn, Atlanta, Raleigh, Charlotte, and Philly. Every week I was in a different city hosting or performing at somebody else's expense. So the thing is, you create the need for it. You don't sell the idea, you sell the event. Because anyone can have an idea and it never manifests. But if you create an event beyond the idea, and people will buy that.
And you know, but also, Sonia and Baraka taught me this interesting thing when we were talking. They said the best thing to do is to make sure that all your writers are educated, number one, and number two, that they're at colleges and universities. Because as long as they're at colleges and universities, you always have a tour. Because either each year or every other year, they will be inviting you in. So one of the first places that I did on tour, I did Stony Brook, because Baraka was chairman of African American Studies. You know, I did the Temple, because Sonia Sanchez was teaching at Temple. I did the University of Penn because Lorraine Carey was teaching at the University of Penn. So being connected to institutions is really, really, really important. So, but I learned Maya Angelou taught, Ozzie Davis taught, Nikki Giovanni taught, Alice Walker taught, and they taught at colleges. So that was a sustainability that allowed us to have income, travel, and also do different types of events with top-notch writers. And I found that to be really important.
Well, I decided after I left LA that I was not going to sustain my life using art, because number one, I was not going to negotiate in any way on what I was going to say. And so as a result, I had 4 degrees, okay? You know, 4 degrees that are not linear. So, and I've had, I don't know, 25 jobs, I don't know, who knows. But what I did was I put myself in a position where I had the freedom to create a career using, because I always have 5, 6 jobs. I'm doing real estate, I'm a lawyer, I do some contract work in law. My husband and I ran a charter school for 9 years, and also have a jewelry company now. And everything, but everything for me, understand this is the through line, everything for me is about empowering and restoring the divinity of African women, whether it's through the law, whether it has, which is why I left conventional law, and using that really just to empower businesses and work with African American women. And then through clinical, I'm a clinician, therapist, I did counseling as well as the theater. That's what I write about. And so everything, it's all connected, but I have to do it in a way, I cannot be encumbered by paradigms or having to negotiate or to go out and beg for jobs. That's just not who I am. So I've created a space where I can be free with my own art, and I've done, I've performed at colleges and so on and all of that, but I don't do a whole lot of marketing. That's just not my bag. And what happens is through word of mouth, through also my education and so on, I've been fortunate enough to get a lot of gigs because people either like what I say or I've been recommended, and that's good enough for me because my primary work is working with organizations that are about empowering young women.
And but like I say this, being able to do a one-person show, you can make a whole bunch of money. Because there's low overhead, they fly you in, they take care of the lights, and you're able to handle your business. But so for me, while I'm sitting here, I'm making money because somebody's producing one of my plays. While I'm sitting here, my book has been required reading at a lot of different colleges, so I'm making money. So it's important to have a product that makes money on its own while you're not there. So I say that because the interesting thing is that, folks call me and ask me like some interesting things. So they call and say, do you have anybody who write educational books, for schools and that kind of stuff? And that was Dr. Jones. And so they said, well, we got several $1,000s. I said, okay. So I called to find him, and then I started to say to myself, I have got to start telling folks who we have. So we have educated writers, we have filmmakers, and I had to directly go out there and market. We have sexual stuff that's off the hook, and and all kinds of stuff. You know, so, and I remember that was just really, really important to find out. Cynthia Cosette, when folks was like, you know anybody with music, call Cynthia, you know, and call different people. So I found out that all around me were talents that I didn't know about. So I started asking somebody, what do you really do? And people said, like Kyle, like one day I was at Kyle's house, he started playing the piano. I said, can you stop playing with me? Okay. And then he started singing. I was like, I had no idea. So find out some of the things that you can do and market that, and also start doing things that you can't do and market that.
Okay. All right. I'm going to turn it over to another member of the tour. I think we have a couple more
Dr.
people
Jones?
here.
Dr. Jones?
So I'm honored to be here.
Can you please give us your name?
Oh, yeah, I'm Dr. Stephen Jones. I'm actually Associate Dean at Villanova University. I've written several books to help students learn how to study and be successful in going to college. Because we know that a lot of students come into college and they don't have the support that they need. So I think that it's been all of your efforts that have worked them to a place where they potentially see success in the college environment. So I wanted to hear from you, what are some ways that you've used your art to support students in college so that they can go on to have successful careers?
So that's a good question, because being a touring artist and an educator and speaking to the university tour, I made sure that when we went to New Orleans, it was myself, Ronnie Wade, Twin Poets, and Black Ice. And we went to every college out there. Suno Fluids, and they paid for it. And I set up tours while within that tour. And I spent the week at Suno in the classroom teaching them how to write, how to edit, how to turn it into the performance, and then how to teach it. I taught teachers how to teach poetry. We went to a couple of middle schools, McDowell number 35, and the kids there were so empowered by our presence, just because Black Ice. Oh, you Black Ice. Oh, you know Black Ice. But their stories, and it was so, and I still remember, painful. But we had them write through it, and the teacher said, well, how'd you get them to release that? I said, maybe it's your approach, because you're telling them what to do. We're telling them how to allow themselves to be, how to free themselves. And one young lady, and I'll just speak to her story. She was in so much pain because her father lived in the house with her and her grandmother, his mother, but never acknowledged her because who her mother was. She was a byproduct of prostitution and drugs. And he rejected her, but yet lived in the same house with her. And she wrote about that. Now, the teacher knew that she had a problem, but the issue came out in the story. And they are now, through our presence, they wrote and freed themselves. And the teachers also learned how to relate to them. They knew a part of the story, but they didn't know the feeling that they were living. And taught them. So it helped the teachers become better teachers.
But Kyle's son is working on his PhD.
Oh yeah, my son, yeah. Fortunately for me, all academic scholarships for his bachelor's, his master's, and now for his PhD in education. So,
So whatever you're doing, we just need you to bottle it and sell
It's
it.
working.
Right,
That's all we want
my
to do.
middle son is at Rowan, and he wants to do the same thing me and his brothers are doing.
So what makes that passion? What's creating that passion? Because I hear what you're saying about what students need to succeed is passion. So how do you help people discover their passion?
Well, some people tell me I'm intimidating. I don't know why or how, but when I see something in someone, the potential, I help them discover it and dig deeper beneath the surface, ignore the hearsay, the naysayers. If anything, prove them wrong. The moment you use words can't and try, you limit yourself. So I get them to take those words out of their vocabulary. And then once they learn how to empower themselves and see their own potential and develop it into a business, because some people aren't built for school, but life will always be there. So if you give them the tools to function in society, then they create something, they could give something back to society. And that's all I teach, because everything I earn, because it wasn't given to me, I had to earn it. But through earning it, I learned how to give it back. And I also have a photography program called Operation Give Back Photography, where I teach for free on occasions. I'll go into a school, which I'm about to do with my son's program, and teach these underprivileged and at-risk youth photography once a week for the rest of the summer.
But, you know, so one of the first things that I said to Lois, Lois, come back to Philly. So she came back to Philly, and I said, Lois, come over to Camden County College. And so she came. I said, Lois, can you go apply for this job while you over here? She applied for the job and got it. So
One of her 25 jobs.
No.
One of her 25.
But I think like she had only been home for like a month. And so I said, Lois, just go apply for the job. I know the dean. The dean's a good friend of mine. And then she started teaching. And the crazy thing is that her classroom became a different kind of way to experience English. It was really, really, really different. And then when they found out, oh, she's a writer and she performs, so it was interesting, because one day I told them, I said, okay, the class assignment was to come to a performance, and it was her. And they had no idea. And she had a book out, and she did a play, and they were just stunned. So they had that little all-star teacher in the classroom, which was really good.
Yeah, I'm finding out that that's probably one of the things that I think it helps. But giving back is one thing, but I think also achieving your goals, because I think the best lesson to give any student is your own success, because they now see you up close and personal, and then they see the success and realize that that's part of their legacy to be. Yeah. So I'm just curious. I think there were two other people from the tour that's in the audience.
Can I just answer just a quick?
Sure.
One of the things, when you were talking about, one of the things that I'm finding is that for young women, particularly African American women, there's not a landscape, and I look at myself, there's not a landscape necessarily for what's possible for you to be. And until you see people who look like you having that, and I know I went to undergrad, and I had a counselor who didn't even know my name. I mean, for 4 years, I don't know what he tried to, what he tried to do for me, but fortunately I did find the theater company where I had people who supported me and put that fire, but without them, I don't know what direction I would have moved in. And so one of the things that I'm working on now is really creating, I'm working on a book that really looks at, because there needs to be this landscape for me. For example, if I had known, I was an actress at UCLA in the theater department. Right next door was the film department. I am so much more interested in film than I ever was as an actress. But the only thing I saw myself, Marco Williams, who did the two Jaspers and did quite a few, he just did the piece on the black colleges, HBCUs, and so that was my classmate. And so when I look at, but I didn't envision that there was a place for me doing that. So part of being successful is beginning to create a conversation for young women that not only is possible, but making it visible for them to see themselves in that. So that's part of what I'm up to right now. And, and for me, I wear every day, I wear some, through this line that some representation of an African-American shero, so that they can be seen and spoken of and spoken into the world. Because I believe when you speak things into the world, it's vibrations, and eventually it falls on people, and it awakens that for all of us. So today we celebrate Billie Holiday and my great-grandfather, Stephen.
Yeah, I see Billy dangling there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm used to seeing Billy walking. Sorry, Dad. I'm a huge fan of Billie Holiday. But I do want to say I have a commercial I have to do real quickly. It is not for any furniture store, but to all the parents out there, if you want to know one trick to get your child to be a better student, buy them a desk. One of the things that I always say to people is that we did a study one time. We found people's grade point average went up 6 to 8 points by having the desk. Having the desk tells a child that there's a place and a time to study. If you study on the dining room table, it has a limit. It expires as soon as dinner's on the
Yeah.
table. If you study in your bed, it usually expires by the time the television comes on or you're asleep. So that's my advertisement for today. It is buy your child a desk and a place to study. I have 5 minutes left, and I want to try to get into the audience and see if there anyone else that I can ask to speak up. I see two people like nudging each other. You talk, you talk. So in that case, I will solve it. You both will talk. Thank you so much.
All right. My name is Cleus Young, and I'm an author, playwright, educator, filmmaker, designer. You name it, I've done it. Poet. I had the pleasure of being on the tour, and it brought me an experience where, you know, as a child and you perform in front of your parents, they say, hey, you're great, but you may not be great because of your parent. They tell you that you're great. Performing in Philadelphia, it's your appearance. Being able to go out now and being in different environment and see how other people react to your work, then that's what the tour brought me, that wow, I have something that I could share with not only just Philadelphia, but different parts of the country itself. So I'm very thankful for that, because that now opened up my confidence that I could move beyond Philadelphia. My question that I would like to ask is, the art is now commercialized, which means that more people are getting it in it just for the money, right? The original context of the art was to shift society into a different aspect, like the Renaissance period. Is there any of your work that you can contribute or say at this moment that have shifted something in society?
That's a tough one, and I'm going to take a time check, and we have 3 minutes left, so I'm going to 45, 45, 45.
Okay, so if anything, a piece that I think that may have shifted the society in any way is my oldest son's favorite poem called From a Shallow Grave. And it came from a conversation while at the barbershop when he was about 8. He's 28 now. Young man was bragging about wanting to fight another boy over a girl that wasn't his and willing to die, have a shootout with this young man. And so when I started talking to him, I said, why? Found out he was angry because the doctors, that he felt as though the doctors let his mother die in the emergency room. And that rage he never dealt with. So I talked to him, and I wrote that poem, and it became my son's favorite poem. Because it talks about a young man's rage and how he just goes through life destroying everything that is beautiful.
All right, Lois, I'm going to ask you to jump in.
Yeah, can I just acknowledge Larry Robbins for a minute in terms of celebration of Black writing? Because that was the moment for me that legitimately I felt like a writer. And being a part of that, legitimately.
And who was that again?
Larry Robbins.
Larry who?
Celebration
Okay.
Celebration of Black writing. It was amazing, and I still miss it to this day. Remember the first, Kamika and I were right next to Lanya Von Slot, which she had the first book. I was like, that's still one of my favorite moments. But I know real quick, last week one of the most profound things happened to me when we were performing. A woman, must have been in her 60s, came up to me. I did the poem Jumped Into the Water, and it's really about the middle passage and those sisters and brothers subscribing, meaning by choosing through courage to jump overboard, and in terms of making that connection through by becoming ancestors to remind us. And she said to me, after that poem, she said, to this day, I had never seen myself as an African until I heard that poem.
Excellent.
And that was
we're
all
down
I
to
needed.
the last minute.
Boom.
I'm going to let you have the last word, sir.
For me, it was when we did Wade in the Water about the Katrina storm in 2006 that was held over for 3 months, and that changed my life drastically. So I would say the pieces that we did for Katrina, Jumping in the Water was in it. That would be my ultimate.
So guys, I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. It was awesome. I wish you had more time. Join us next week. Next week, you can watch it on repeat, and also we'll be here next month. Larry will have that sent out to all of you guys, and We're wrapping it up now. Thank you all for coming out.